Man, I'm excited today. I can't believe how excited I am today. I have a great friend who I call Big Brother out here in Arizona. His name's Mark. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. But the one thing I just want to add to this is he's a regenerative farmer out here, and I haven't seen all the farmers and all of them out here, but this guy right here, I would say, is number one in Arizona, hands down. There's no doubt about it in my mind. It's what he's growing, what he's doing is amazing, and just to grab a belt loop and learn from him on a lot of things is an honor for a guy like me. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Mark. This is Mark right here.
Thank you for the gracious welcome. And I'm definitely not number one in the Valley, but my approach is quite different than most.
Who are you?
Mark Ryan, Ryba Farms, and then my private membership club is called Rogue Rhino. I went with the company. The Ryba Farms side is my commercial side, which is we have a Safeway Albertsons account, which I've been blessed with for the last 10 years. And then all of our restaurants. So if you're buying food from me for resale, you go through the commercial side. But if you're buying food from me as an end user, we go through the private club. And I decided to split it up. Doing a brand change after 15 years of business has been quite a struggle for me. And there's a lot of confused people. So I'm running under both flags right now, trying to build the membership. It's surprising we have that inner core of people that have jumped right on board, and that gets you inside. It's a private website. It's even got a private Instagram page, and that's where I'm hoping to really make my impact on the community is local. It's hyper local. So. By going with the private membership club, it also gives me the ability to sell my meat that we grow on the farm, which I was not able to do in the past because I don't have a USDA certified clean slaughterhouse. I don't do, we're food safe. I have food safety certifications, but the state and county laws are pretty dang restrictive on what you can and can't do. And so this was my workaround, at least until they change the laws, which they possibly can, and then we'll have to move again. But being a small farmer, we have that ability to, juke when we need to juke. And when COVID hit, it crushed us. For being a little guy, we had 31 restaurants, and we lost all of our business in one day.
Yeah, it's hard.
So it was a real eye opener. I went to my staff, and I've only got so much money in the savings account to keep you guys employed, so will you work for free if I can't make it happen? And I understand they have families, they have mortgages, they got power bills just like everybody else, and they all said yes. And again, I was blessed by a really strong team. And then, I got the PPP loan, which saved me for another 45 days. And then I turned into this Farm Box program, which has really boomed. It's really been a big blow up for us. And the Farm Box program basically is a box of 10 to 12 items that we're currently growing, and it's our choice. And we did these boxes, and we sold them for like $40 a box. And it started with we used some of the local restaurants that during the COVID time that had gone to curb service. And they were trying everything they could just because of the struggle was real for restaurant. And the struggle is still very, very real for them. It's a horrible industry to be in right now, especially with the minimum wage change and all of that stuff. And as a local provider, our food's more expensive. It's just the way it is because we do everything by hand. So labor is our number one cost. But these boxes were just going and going and going. And then I made a deal with the food bank people and also a church which is really close to the studio here in Mesa. And we started doing this box program with them, and we were basically giving 100 boxes a week to the church. And Patrick, you should have seen, it was the most heartwarming thing to drive up there on our reefer trucks, and we roll open the back, and there's people lined up around the church like a big rock concert, and their families, and they're
God's work right there.
They're desolate. I mean, they're barefoot kids and the whole thing. I mean, these are families. These aren't druggies or, and so we're actually handing our food direct to the family.
Nutrient dense food.
Yeah,
Let's talk about it. He's handing medicine the way he cultivates.
Yeah, it was harvested
so.
the day before, and it was great. And that program ended, and so I and it took me a lot of years even to get to the table to talk to food banks and the USDA and this kind of money that's out there. And now we're on another program, but I'm forced to run my product through the actual food banks. And the same
forced. I mean, it's the wording is like. First, we're talking about a farm box and we're talking about Instagram and contact. Where are you at and how do people get a hold of you?
I am out in Santan Valley. This farm, this would be the third one that I've built in the last 15 years. When I moved out there, I thought I was moving out to the Tules, but I'm no longer in the Tules. I got 10,000 rooftops growing in around me. It's a little 3-acre farm. My concept of farming is different than most people. Every square inch of our property is, for me, our mantra is we feed the soil, not the plants. So I compost the living daylights out of the whole place from head to toe is covered in about 4 inches of compost. We make our own compost.
Ferments. He does all kinds of stuff.
There's 400 trees on the property. We grow 160 different crops.
Moringa, like medicinal plants. My experience when I walk into that thing, I just want to take my shoes off. And when people understand, when you know, right? You take your shoes off. And mind you, I'm in the middle of Arizona desert. I'm not taking my shoes off, right? I'm not. When I walk into him, all of a sudden there's big banana trees. There's my new favorite edible flower is what is it?
Hibiscus.
The hibiscus, but no, the big weed-looking things. Hollyhocks,
yeah.
Right? It's just like a hollyhock, beautiful jungle of just majestic flowers and tropical zones. And like when he says he composts the whole thing. You walk on his property, the entire walkways and out everywhere is like a sponge. So it's not desert, hard, loomy, sandy, dense, compacted. It is soft. It's like the reason I take off my shoes is the same thing. I go up to Mendocino in the redwood forest. I take my shoes off. I do it all over the world actually, but these are spots, and it reminds me of that because when I step, my foot is touching the energy of Mother Earth and the planet. I'm touching a mycelium. Like for instance, there's miles and miles of hundreds of miles of mycelium underneath every footprint. When I look and I scratch, his soil, I look under it, it's living soil everywhere out there. So, and I haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen anything in the desert that reminds me of standing underneath a redwood tree in Mendocino County, California.
And grounding is extremely healthy for you too.
Yep, it is.
So, that was another one of my concepts that is just so not practiced, and is trying to understand to live in a symbiotic relationship. So, and everybody views desert soil as horrible soil, and that's not true at all.
I agree with that. It's not true.
Not true at all.
Yeah.
It's mineral dense. It just needs organics, and it just needs a lot of common sense. But I'm not a strip farmer where I don't have big, giant fields. I've got little pastures all around, surrounded by trees. I believe that tree roots are pulling mineral up from the bottom. Then we compost the top. Topsoil is so important.
He hand cuts and drops his weeds.
Yeah.
Right there. Right on the rows of his strawberries and wherever he's growing.
Yeah.
It's a real farm.
Yeah. That's part of the game that we play.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer of the farmer's shadow. So, it's just things that we do that are practices that are really uncommon. And, I have a lot of people, engineer type thinking folks that, they want to know why we don't, how many carrots did you grow? And I go, I can grow different carrots here and grow carrots there. And you don't know how many carrots you grow? So, no, I have no clue. I knew how much, I know when we grow them, when we put them in. Every garden grows differently. I till. I am a firm believer of tillage. when you need it.
When you need it,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I've got certain patches, and I'm only a little 3-acre guy, but I've got some real hard caliche patches that I've got grass problems. I've got gophers. We are herbicide, pesticide, and fungicide free. So,
Right.
the battle against the insects is real.
Yeah.
And we have found what I think is probably the best way to fight that is learning the life cycle of the plant that you're growing. And I learned that with weeds. And when you figure out how a weed grows, then you kind of got your basic understanding. So, and I know the plant wave thing was another rabbit hole that I ran down while we were starting to listen to the frequency of the plants and how that frequency changes. And as you know, being in the growing world, the stages of plant life, germination, veg, fruit, and then basically dying, and that in all of those processes of life, the bugs come. The frequency of the plant changes.
Yeah.
It's
awesome. Yeah.
It's nature's garbage
Yeah,
men are
so
coming
cool,
to do
man.
their work, and so you can't fight them. In fact, you want to invite them in.
Yeah.
And that biodiversity is so necessary
Yes.
for a living soil, and you're going to have bugs.
Bugs are good.
Bugs are good, whether they're destructive or not, or ants or gophers. Everybody goes, why? How do you do like our fruit trees? Why aren't you netting your peach trees? I tried that, and it didn't work for me. We just killed a bunch of birds in the netting. Yeah, and I don't want to pick a bunch of dead birds out of the peach tree. I just don't want to do it. So we share. They get the tops, we get the bottoms. And fig trees. I'm a big fig grower. We've got 200
Actually,
fig trees.
let's talk about your fig trees. What type of figs are you growing?
I'm
Where did
growing-
you get them? And how did they get there?
Yeah, Pete's honey fig is my favorite. It's a family deal. My grandfather out of Portland, Oregon, is Sicilian. He came over in the early 1900s as an 8-year-old kid. He didn't even come with his parents. He came with an aunt and uncle. They went through Ellis Island, and they lived in the ghettos and basically fought their way to the West Coast. And this is, can you imagine an 8-year-old kid today going to another country?
Can't even. Oh, I couldn't imagine it.
It's like, so that generation was so different than what we have today, but their traditions were so strong. And my grandfather ended up in eastern Washington in the apple fields and the orchard fields, and he was a migrant worker. He picked apples for a living, and that's where he met his wife. And then they moved down to Portland, and they bought a home there. My grandfather went to work for a company called Pioneer Fruit, which was one of the big fruit companies. This is back in the 1920s, not 2020s. And he was very well known in the circuits or the circles there of his gardens. I mean, people back then grew all their food. It was just part of life. So in the 60s, I'm a very, very young guy, but I remember when Grandma and Grandpa went back to the old country. And they didn't, they didn't trust banks, so they kept all their money in coffee cans, and they wouldn't fly. They didn't trust airplanes, so they took a train to New York, hopped on a steamship, and steamship to Sicily, and stayed there with relatives. And while Grandpa was there, this is how the story goes, as I understand how it's been passed down to me, that he ran into what they called a honey fig. And that fig, Grandpa he had never seen it in Oregon at that time. It was only the Black Mission, and there's a couple other, and it was a very different fig. So Grandpa actually took fig cuttings, and he knew, and also grapevine clippings, and he knew customs wouldn't allow it when he came back. So my grandma hid the grapevines in her wallet, and Grandpa hid the fig cuttings in his dirty laundry so that they could get through customs.
I've done that. I've done that. All over the world, I've bought stuff.
So, and when he got back to Portland, he was successful in grafting this honey fig onto another fig tree, and then created this, and it's named Pete's Honey Fig after my grandfather. And I'd remembered the story, and it was much later in life, like in my 50s, when I had discovered Pete's Honey Fig, and I go, And it was actually an orchard or a tree company out of Oregon, and they had the story of my grandpa. I couldn't believe it. So I got to have this tree. So, of course, now we got about 100 of them. But so it's a really great story when you do a tour on my property and I show you the honey figs. We sell a shit ton of them. So, and it's just, it is a very different fig, and it's proliferous down here. Figs grow great here. It's an easy tree to graft. It's an easy tree to grow.
Easy to root.
Yeah, crazy fruit, but it all comes at once, and you got to be prepped. So you got to dry it. You got to make your jams and jellies, and you got to rock and roll. And it's got exceptional shade cover.
Yeah, totally, and it's almost in a way an evergreen because the leaves are so beautiful and thick. It falls, right? But
it
stays
deciduous.
a long time. Yeah.
And you can eat the fig leaves, the new leaves.
Oh, interesting.
You can cook with them. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with the leaves. So it's a really great desert tree. And it's got roots with my family, so I
that's great.
I got to walk around with my rooster head up, going, this is cool.
Right. So that's the legacy part of the farm, right?
Right. Totally.
We talked about harvesting your own meat. What kind of meat? And I think you have mushrooms we want to talk about too.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get a snapshot of really what 3 acres is super impactful and just a pleasure to visit.
Yeah, the mushrooms I was the first commercial aquaponic grower in 2009. I had actually stumbled into aquaponics back then through the University of Arizona. They actually had a setup down there, and we went down there and checked it out, and it was a really cool concept. The whole idea of raising fish in the desert, and then a recirculating water system, and then you're using the vegetables grown in that water to filter the water, so you can get 2 harvests out of every gallon of water over and over and over again. Fascinated me. So at that time, there were only 2 places on the planet where you could get some decent schooling. One of them was in Hawaii, where we ended up, and the other one was down in it was south of Florida. It was in the islands down there, and I think it was the Virgin Islands where that one was. And so we ended up in Hawaii, and my business partner at that time, we were intrigued. So we bought the class and flew over, and I'm thinking we're going to go drinking on the beach and chase bikinis and all that. And it was a hardcore class. I mean, we were in class 8 hours every day, and I was fascinated by the concept. And this group of people, they broke it down really well, really easily, the tanks and how the system worked. And then part of the class was actually building plans for the tanks. So when we came back to Arizona and Phoenix, we built them. And I built a system on the back parking lot of my building. And now I'm raising vegetables in a parking lot. It was phenomenal. It was so fun. It was so cool. And of course, we made a million mistakes, and I spent way, way, way too much money learning. And for me, it was always the best way to learn was to do.
Failure's the lesson in life for learning, for sure.
And I'm a huge bookworm. I love to read, and I love concepts. But until I actually put that concept to reality by me doing it physically, do I really understand the whole concept and then try and adapt it to the desert lifestyle? So we had a lot of problems with it, for sure. It was too hot for the water. The tilapia was the first fish that we raised. So we had tilapia. They were booming fish. They loved the hot water, and so they're having babies like crazy, and we're getting little tiny fish in our system. They're eating the roots of all the plants, so the plants can't grow, and and then in the wintertime, the water got too cold, the fish would die, and then we had a hailstorm, and it took out our whole farm in one 20-minute storm. The whole thing was gone. Crushed it. It's like, oh, shit. And so we were back to, 6 weeks starting all over again. And so, it was an expensive experiment. We learned a lot. I was growing lettuce at that time. And then, the lettuce game for me was a very difficult game because of Arizona, and we are the lettuce kings here. So why can't I sell this lettuce for $5 a pound? So I went to Yuma, and we were invited. There were about 10 or 12 of us. It was the Tres Hombres was the name of the farm or something, and we actually went out into the field there and watched this team with a tractor and a trailer, and they had a school bus with a porta potty, and these guys and gals we followed them through this lettuce field and did 48,000 pounds of lettuce in about 3.5 hours.
Oh my God.
I was in utter shock. Now I know
That's
why.
good cogs right there.
Now I know why the lettuce game doesn't work. I mean, they're doing it for pennies a pound. And then, of course, it's not organic. It's not any of those things, but it's still, that part of Arizona, it's huge financial. The Yuma and that area, and then Coachella Valley, it's the lettuce capital of the world.
Imagine the water usage out there with the
It was
agriculture.
It was all flood. So
man,
and then they're boxing it, and then they were trailering it right there, and it was they were all, at that time it wasn't 53, but they were 40-foot containers, and then they had these tank things plugged into it, and I was asked.
So they pick it, wash it, box it?
Never washed it.
Never washed it. Interesting.
And I asked about that.
Oh, interesting.
And he said they did that last night.
Okay.
So I got to thinking, okay, how did they do this last night?
Yeah. And actually, what did they put in it?
Yeah,
There's always a preservative of some sort, especially when we're talking about produce.
It's like, okay, they were flying it with a helicopter, and then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are my shoes going to melt because of what we're walking in? Or I had no idea. And, and then what were the tanks that they plugged into the unit? And, but it was their business, not mine. But it was a real eye opener. It was a beautiful education, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't hate on those people for any way, shape, or form.
No.
They are living, they are working,
Yeah.
they are selling their product to the best of their ability with the knowledge that they had. But it was not me. It's not the way I wanted to do things. And they're providing a very valuable product.
It's crazy how they're like, even with in corn farming across the Midwest, and I study a lot of stuff in farming and cleanliness and herbicides and pesticides and just about a few months ago I was reading about glyphosates being sprayed 2 weeks before harvest comes in, and the reasoning behind spraying the glyphosates is so the harvest will all come in together at the same time. Corn finishes up, and it's so, and that's their washing, I would say, right? 2 weeks before.
That's a dry and wash, yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy the way, this is great dialogue and discussions, because as a consumer, walking into, you have a choice. You have a choice to know your farmer first and foremost. That is the direction you want to go, hands down, no doubt about it. And when knowing your farmer, you want to have some good questions for your farmer. What is nutrient dense food? If a farmer doesn't know what nutrient dense food is, you shouldn't be. And that's what you're seeking, then you should go to the next farmer, right? That can answer these questions. What's living soil? What's biologics? Tell me about your concept and what you're doing on your regenerative agriculture. A real farmer that has it. If you ask Mark these questions, his eyes are going to go, his eyebrows are going to go up, his ears are going to point. He's going to be excited to answer these questions.
You bet. And being a farmer here in Phoenix, and there are phony farmers or resellers, and they're a plague on the farmers markets.
Good point.
And so many people don't know.
Good point.
That these guys are just nothing but resellers.
Yeah.
Because there's no rule or there's no law, that says that you can't go to Costco and buy their carrots and package them in your package and resell it. And as a consumer, you're not with it. You don't. And the real crime there, Pat, is that they can make way more money than we can.
It's exact. That's crazy.
Because they're reselling it. They don't
Exactly.
have the labor. They don't have any of the work that gets involved. They don't have the refrigeration costs. They don't have anything other than that small piece of profit, and it's just pure BS. And the farmers all know who they are, and because they see the food that comes out, like watermelons in May, that's not grown in Arizona. And I had that discussion with a whole bunch of people, and Sprouts has organic watermelon. How come you don't? And all right, let's talk about watermelons. It takes 88 days to grow a watermelon. Tell me, let's back that up from today. Where are we? We're in December, and take 12. You need 14 hours of daylight. Where are you that you have that in December? Well, you're on the other side of the equator. And then how do they get it here and still sell the dang thing for $3.95?
And you got a farmer with a farm name at a farmer's market selling his farm products that aren't even his farm products.
Right.
So that's a hard one to swallow. And being a vintner, right? It's so funny bringing this up, but when I learned being a vintner in Alexander Valley in Sonoma County with my father, and finding out that like in Napa County, there's to call it Napa Valley wine, it's like 20% of Napa Valley wine has to be in the bottle.
That's it.
All the rest of it is sourced from other areas.
Right.
And you can call it and require that type of payment structure,
Yeah. They have that same funny law here, like in the olive grower here. It's only 3% of the olive oil. That's all he needs.
Right,
and
3%.
3%. And he can bring it in from other and still call it his own. It's insane.
Like I said, you got to know your farmer, right?
Yeah.
Again, get some great questions. Think about it. Go about the process. You're feeding your family food. The reason you're going organic in the first place is because you're conscious, obviously, on health and what you want to feed your family. Now, find the farmer that's honest, has integrity, and does it regeneratively. And I'm not saying other ones don't have integrity and don't do it, but if that's what you're seeking, have a Q&A with the farmer. Ask him some simple questions. Tell me about your farm. Go to his farm, man. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Go to his farm.
I mean, when you see, go to his farm. And for me, the nutrient dense game was a very difficult game because how do you know? How do I prove to my constituents, my customers, that I'm giving them a really good product?
You can't put it on a label because now your certification stamp is gone.
Yeah.
You can't make any claims. It's crazy.
This is what I've started a new program with, Pat. I don't even know if I've shared this with you yet.
This is good. My ears are open.
Yeah, I'm doing. I started a bricks testing program.
Okay.
With our farm products, and it's for our club members. And so, what we have done in our mushroom lab, which is our clean room, basically, I've set up a bricks meter, and we are going to now publicize. We're going to bricks all of our food, and everybody go, what's your baseline? I have no idea what my baseline is going to be. Yeah, I can see what a baseline for carrots is in California, but nobody's doing this in Arizona.
Yeah, right.
And I have no idea what it's going to be like.
Probably higher because of the heat.
So, yeah, and then the educational process of people understand what bricks really is, and it's a very simple sugar measurement.
Yeah.
But if you study plant life or how plants work, the symbiotic relationship with sugar and mineral, nutrient density in every plant, they're together.
Yeah.
So the higher the sugar content, the higher the mineral content.
And you find that in wine.
Oh, that's how it started.
That's what we do. Our bricks level, because we were
ago.
dry farm. My father and I are dry farmers, so we have stressed vines sitting on top of a shale mountain that is intense. Went down, watered them for the first few years barely, and they had to find their own. So the fruit, which is the wine, the grapes that are on it, are super dense, small, high flavors, very impactful. And when you're measuring the bricks on those, it's completely different than one that you irrigate with water and flood out.
Sure.
Totally different. So harvesting's different. Everything's is different on that.
Right.
So tell me more about this bricks program.
So for us, that's what I wanted to get started was, and we'll show it up at the markets, and first I'm educating my employees. so that we have a story to tell our customers. And I'm going to start publicizing at our market. Okay, our carrots bricks at 14. You know, this is where our broccoli bricks is. This is where our peaches are bricksing. And I know it's going to create a lot of dialogue and questions, which we want, because we want people to know this is what's being grown on our farm. This is why we're trying to be different. Nobody else is trying to approach this with a metric or a meter type value. You can say the word nutrient dense all you want, but what does it really
Just
mean?
another claim until it's proven.
Sure, it's just like organic.
Yeah.
That's a marketing scheme, completely a marketing scheme. So, and regenerative is a marketing scheme also. I mean, these are just new words of old ways of growing
They're
food.
great words. They meant something. They've been, molested.
Completely.
Completely. But to something, to you and me, organic and regenerative and living soil and all these things they still mean that there's so much value to that. And we don't have replacement words. That's
Right.
the other thing.
Well, if you read, the old regenerative is paddock farming.
Oh, paddock.
Paddock. Started in
interesting.
Australia in 1800s.
Oh, great. Didn't know that.
So yeah, it's just paddock farming is what they called it back then. And my regenerative farming is way different than other regenerative harvesters. So if you are growing harvest grasses and you're a rancher and you're moving your animals around, you have to play that game with you so that like half of your grass doesn't get eaten,
Understand. Yep.
or else you kill the plant. So for me, I'm a vegetable farmer using these animals. So after our plants or my gardens have fruited, we've collected our seed. It's all part of our process. Then we throw up the electric fence, and then we throw sheep in there, and they eat our field all the way down to the ground. And it saves labor, intense labor. And they fertilize the soil for us too at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first started, it was chickens and ducks, and they took way too. Because I grow sequentially. I have to have food every week of the year. Mm-hmm. I don't shut down in the summertime because of the Albertsons contract. We got to be there anyway. So now that we're getting into the summer season, we just get up and go to work early, and by 11 o'clock we're babbling idiots, and everybody goes home and takes a nap. So. But we made it work, and we're understanding we're getting into the hot season. So what we can and can't grow, we just change the crops up. But for me, regenerative is different than like a rancher per se, that wants to try and pasture feed his animals. Yeah. So he's going to push around his cows. He's going to push around his sheep, whatever he is growing. And so that's where that paddock farming came into concept, and in Australia, in the very arid parts of the country, and there are huge sheep farmers there.
Yeah, I mean that's where I remember it started.
They would push them all around,
yeah.
and what a lot of people don't understand is farmable land that is used for crops, raising vegetables and crops. There's only so much good farming land, and the United States is blessed with the whole, center part of the country. But where the ranchers are up in the mountains, you can't really grow anything up there. Yeah. So that's a perfect place to run your cows and your sheep, but you've got to understand the local grasses. And back in the olden days, in the 1800s, when the cattle farmers, they hated sheepers. Why did they hate sheepers? Because the sheepers ate the grass to the ground.
Grass,
all the way to the ground.
Yeah,
they left nothing.
Yeah.
Because they left them on the land too long. Yeah. They didn't keep moving them.
Right.
The buffalo herds, why did they always move? Why were they always in movement? Yep. They went from garden to garden to garden to new grass to new grass to new grass.
And kneading along the way.
Yeah, and it's a perfect ecosystem for that whole area.
Yeah.
So when farmers that are trying the regenerative approach, if they want to change over, they've got, the expense of fencing, they've got to move their water around, and then they're going to have different valleys, nooks and crannies that are going to grow better than others. So, and that's where the farmer shadow comes back into the game. This whole idea that robots are going to grow our food is just ludicrous to me. Because, the robot's going to give you the data, but what are you going to do about it? I mean, just read the data.
It's like how many carrots did you grow on an acre? Right? Who gives a fuck?
Yeah,
Like just grow some real carrots,
thing.
right?
Yeah, it's just,
I guess when
So how do you know how many you sold last year? Well, we're going to try. And for me, being a small farmer, I have to move my food around, so I'm always rotating, and that's just to trick the bugs.
Yeah.
Especially when we're doing skunk or a squash and melon for squash bugs, because they are prolific here.
Yeah.
And there's not too many critters that will eat a squash bug. Chickens won't even touch them. Guineas will, but guineas will eat all your other stuff too. And there's a whole problem that goes along with keeping that critter running around your farm too.
Speaking about chickens and turkeys, I mean, Mark does a bunch of events at his farm. I mean, just great, like great community events, wine or weddings, all different stuff that he does. And he has all his chicken and bens all up right next to the area. It's like it's a 3-acre farm, so everything's together. But this is the first farm I can walk around and I smell absolutely no animals. I don't smell any chicken poop. I don't smell, there's nothing like you would go out to a farm. Everything is super healthy, super clean. And so let's highlight and talk a little bit about the why to that.
The best thing I think of, it's like the quality of life for your animals. Stocking density. It's all about stocking density. And I learned this in the aquaponic game, and man we're greed. We are ego and greed is what drives, more. And if I can make money at this, I'm going to do more. And in the fish world, you grow too many fish and they'll just kill themselves because everything's gone.
Right.
Too much ammonia in the water, too much CO2, and they all die.
Yeah.
And so that's where I all of a sudden, when I was doing with tilapia, and I learned that completely, and then I had these little tanks, because I'm a big believer in vortexing water. I know water has memory, and I was doing these egg-shaped tanks, and I had 3 fish in this 150-gallon egg-shaped tank, and I was growing mint out of the top of it. And that little bed of mint made me about $50 a month off 3 fish. When my other tanks, I got 3,000 fish, and I'm barely making $1,000 off of them. But I got to feed them, I got to power them, I've got to go through all that motion. So, and then with the whole aquaponic game, one of my second farm that I got to build, I actually had the chance to go side by side, soil, water.
Yeah.
And it crushed me. I mean, soil crushed the water growing in nutrient density, and we do a lot of tissue testing, third-party labs.
Man.
And then the chefs were complaining so much about my water products that would just fold up and shrivel up in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And when I'm taking them the soil stuff, it gave them that longevity that they were looking for, that week in the cooler. And I really struggled with that game. Okay, so then I got into genetics and the DNA of a plant, and then the light bulb just went on. I get it. You don't grow leafy greens in water. They don't have the genetics. They don't know what to do. And even when I played the cannabis game with the industrial hemp, cloning, which was, a picture of the mother plant and how it doesn't work at all. And then we moved to plants that actually grow in water. And they have the DNA. They know how to pull.
Lilies. I mean, there's probably all kinds of, but
taro.
Taro. Yeah, exactly.
Probably one of the healthiest plants we could have grown.
Taro root. Oh,
taro root. Yeah. Man. So and then there's a water potato called a wapato, and so all of these have that DNA back in their genes, and they know how to take
Interesting.
how to get the nutrient out of water.
Never even put that together.
Lettuce
that
doesn't
is
get
really
it.
interesting.
Basil doesn't get it. So I'm completely convinced that indoor growing, hydroponics, none of this is the secret to feeding America.
Yeah.
It's the small little farmer that is gonna, and it's got to be, and it's not a monocropper.
Yeah.
It's got to be bio. It's got to be diverse.
Yeah.
And then re-educating. The biggest problem I think I have, and of my closest friends here that live in the Gilbert and the East Valley, best of best friends, they don't shop at my farm. And I always wondered why they don't do that. And I have a convenience problem because I'm only available to sell them food on Saturday mornings.
Right.
Where most people want to, they got other things they got to get going. So, those are the challenges that I struggle with. That is, I can't be a grocery store, and I don't want to be a grocery store, but I do want to put out nutrient-dense food to my community. And how do I do that? And that's where the whole mindset of the private membership club.
Yeah, love it.
The people that are, and it's only $50 a year, but the people that are going to join that club are like-minded thinking with me. And so they're gonna go with the role, and they're gonna understand my struggles. They're gonna accept my kale that has holes in it.
Yeah.
They're gonna look at weird zucchinis. They're gonna.
How do they join that?
RogueRhino.club is the name of the website, and it's got a front page on it. It will give you the breakdown of what we're up to. And then once you join the membership, you get to go behind the paywall. We have a grocery store on there, and I've got all my videos on there. We do lots of workshops and community learning. We just got done with a salsa class last Saturday.
Yeah, that's
we
so
do
much.
essential oils. We
Yeah.
do canning classes, and we'll do chicken harvesting. It's my dream, Patrick, to get a small group of people food sovereign. I know I can't conquer the world. And I don't even want to try and conquer Phoenix. But now I know I can feed my community.
Yeah.
I can feed, off of 3 acres, I can feed 100 people.
Yeah.
Granted, you might not be eating what you want to eat,
Yeah.
but I can keep you healthy. And I do that with me and 4 other employees.
That's right. Great employees.
We should have little farms like my setup, polka dotted all over the valley.
Agreed.
And every community, instead of a golf course, should have a little farm.
Amen to that.
And then that farm should grow for the community. The community has to support it, of course,
Yeah.
by buying their food. But that's that's a European concept. That's not me dreaming this up. This is the European. They've been doing that concept in Europe for 100 years, maybe even 1,000. That small village thinking.
Yeah.
Or tribe thinking. Everybody has their role to play. And on a farm, as you well know, everybody works.
Yeah.
Even the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, 5-year-old kids are working.
That's called sustainability right
Yeah,
there. That's
yeah.
part of the whole sustainability lifestyle. So let's say I lived in South Mountain and I wanted to join the club and I wanted some of your food, knowing that you have a box program, is there a way for me to get that box other than driving all the way across Phoenix
I have
Valley?
drop locations. I'm not all the way across the valley. So if you're at South Mountain per se, I have a drop location in downtown Phoenix.
Yeah, awesome.
So I've got 4 drop locations right now. We're looking for other ones, but for me, logistics plays a huge role in my game. And I used to do all of my deliveries, especially with the restaurants and the chefs. I am the face of the farm. So the chefs want to talk to me, especially if they've got a problem.
Yeah.
If they've got rotten peaches or if something didn't look right and then they want to know what's coming.
Yeah.
And who better to talk to than the farmer?
Yeah.
You've got what's coming next. What's and I go, I want your green tomatoes. Well, you're not going to get my green tomatoes until the fall. He goes, well, I want them I don't do green tomatoes in the spring. You got to understand how tomatoes work in the desert. It just doesn't happen that way. I'll give you hundreds of pounds in the fall, but not in the spring. Our season is too short. So, and that's what that relationship. But after COVID, that all went
So
away.
the drop locations, they just need to be a cool area?
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm looking. I don't even need refrigeration, like a walk-in
Because
cooler.
I got my Tempe. You're more than welcome to use that. That's almost a perfect
But I
setup.
need somebody there.
Oh, we are there.
I mean,
We
during
have-
the week,
yeah,
I've
it's
had
just a
several
wheel call.
locations where people are calling me because the door was closed.
Yeah, I understand. That's
And
hard.
they're, I mean, and Amazon really, really ruined the door concept.
Yeah.
You know, being delivered to the door.
Yeah.
I want it tomorrow. I'm not waiting.
I
Yeah.
know.
So with that in mind, as a small guy, we all have our struggles. So that I think is we can go on for hours, and I can share with you as much as I can come up with. But
Yeah, I got a couple things other than that to talk about. And we'll talk about the will call, because I will call my soil out of there and products all the time. And all the between 9 and 4, anybody can go in there and grab, and the will calls all set up with your name. But other than that, a couple things. I mean, you said, having a hole in the leaf, and a worm might, bugs eat, right? And for me, I do a lot of consulting around the world, both in cannabis and food. And I got to tell you, some of these facilities and places I go into, when I see absolutely zero bug holes in a leaf, or I see zero signs of bug pressure life, I immediately feel like I shouldn't be standing in that area.
Yeah, it's
and I need to
sterile.
go outside if it's in a huge greenhouse or facility and get some fresh air, right? Or even when I'm out in big ag property and you see absolutely nothing, man. I mean, there's your sign. I mean,
yes,
honestly, there's your sign.
A sterile environment. For us, in our indoor growing programs, I mean, we grow microgreens indoors. For Albertsons, we have all of Arizona and
Yeah, that was
Nevada.
the next thing. I want to talk about the microgreens.
Yeah, so we distribute to them, and that contract has been a complete blessing. And it's all done in a 50 by 50 room, and it's
That's how I met you, using Big Root soil in your
for
in your
my
microgreens.
Microgreens,
yeah.
absolutely. And then our mushroom box again. That was way back from the aquaponic days when I was down at the college in Tucson. I met the professor down there, and he asked if there was any chance that I could sell mushrooms up in the valley, and he's the head mycologist, and I go, shit, who couldn't sell mushrooms in the valley? And so then he had his people build bags for us, and I built a storage container and built the environment, and so then we started working into. Now I've been probably one of the bigger blue-collar mushroom growers in the valley now for the last 12, 14 years.
I love going and grabbing your
Yeah.
mushrooms at the farm. I mean, everything at the
So,
farm.
and that mushroom, the waste product from the mushroom bags goes into our compost. And I can't tell you, I mean, ultimately, my goal, 0 inputs for our little farm. I don't want anything from the outside. I want everything to be recycled inside.
Sustainability.
Yeah, complete. I don't want to buy fertilizer from anybody, and still be able to grow that nutrient-dense product. And I made a solemn promise to myself that this property will be much better when I leave it than it was when I got there.
I
And
mean, that's already
whoever
happened times
whoever
10x.
inherits it after me, with the 500 plus trees now that are on the property, I pray that they take care of it, they water it, and they'll be able to harvest
If I could find a property like
that
that,
nourishment for years and years to come.
man, that's an exciting piece of property. So we're looking for another property, probably next year, hopefully. But that's my last property, and that's exactly what I'm looking. I don't care about the buildings. I care about the land. I care about a guy like us that went out there and he's thinking the same thing. He wants to leave it to somebody like us. I want to pick up that journey and that dream that somebody put on a piece of property and continue that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to jump more into. I see the struggle of every time I come see you, you're in you're behind a desk and there's just loads of paperwork. Let's talk about the struggle being a farmer, an organic farmer, trying to work under some of these certifications that you have to deal with.
Absolutely. Back in the day when I started the farm, I had sold my low voltage business, so I was very well funded. So it was easy for me to have a office manager take on that role for me, for the billing, and then all the paperwork that goes involved with filing and organics, food safety, and just keeping, and bills, keeping all that accounting piece in check. And the farm didn't make money. I lost money on the farm for the first 10 years, easy. We've just recently made the turn to where we're staying afloat, and we're going to keep going, and I'm going to keep building it. But I had to take on that role. And it was such an eye-opener for me, Pat, that I was missing. And I love the garden work. I love I love getting all of that. But I really didn't grasp the financial situation of my business. All I knew was I had a shrinking checking account. And because it was such a draw, and I didn't realize what was. So by me taking on that office manager role, it was like, an epiphany. And so, oh shit, I'm going to cut this out. We don't need this many folks. And, this is what's really getting me. So it was a huge learning process. And then to take on the organic certification by myself, and then the food safety people by myself, and the ridiculousness of the state, and then, all the graphs and all the paperwork, and then keeping employees, taxes, payroll, all of that is part of the system. And it's been extremely healthy for me to take on that role, although I hate it.
Yeah.
It's not where I want to be.
Yeah.
But until I can afford to bring in somebody that I can trust.
Yeah.
Partners, as you well know, I had a loving partnership, and I lost that partnership, friendship over money.
Yeah.
And that business divorce, left both of us crushed.
Yeah.
And it cost $100,000. Yeah. To separate, and it's just foolishness.
Yeah.
That was ego and greed.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not interested in bringing on new partners. I want to do it myself.
Yeah.
Even talking to investors, I don't want somebody that is very well funded to come into my place and say, "Oh, I'll give you $150,000, but I want 15% of your business." And I go, "Why would I give up 15% of my business that I've worked 15 years doing for your $150,000? Why would I do that?"
I'm in the same boat, man.
You don't know what I know.
Yeah.
Granted, yes, I need your money to heal the wounds, and it's mostly debt. Managing debt is the name of the game. So
yes,
to me, the investor carrot, I lost that inertia, and now it's just figuring out how to make it with what I have and the income that's what gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah.
I know I've got to make $2,000 today.
Yeah.
I just know I have to do it.
Yep.
And I'm here talking with you.
Well, if we keep talking about how they can find you, and we keep putting that in there, it's going to help out. So
yeah.
I know you're at the farmers markets on Saturday, and
right.
Your farm is open for farm boxes and people to come see it over there on Saturday.
Yep.
So how do people get a hold of you on Saturday? Where do they go? Gilbert Market?
Yeah, Gilbert Market is
Gilbert Farmers Market.
Right. It's the one where I hunkered down, and I've been there over 10 years now. So when I was with one of the first farmers there, and back then it was a producers only, and there was a time I was in 4 markets every Saturday, and selling our wares, and I was scattered all over the whole frickin' city, and it was just so expensive to send out 4 trucks and 4 teams, and then the one thing so many people don't get about farmers markets, and I'll never forget. I was up at a meeting of the Portland Farmers Markets, and the lady was telling how that her vendors were making $10,000 in 4 hours on a Saturday. And, there was just so much shit at my age that you just, you want to call them out because it's so foolish. The first thing I said is, for anybody to make $10,000 at a farmer's market in 4 hours, they got to take $10,000 worth of food to the market. Do you have any idea the concept of that? It's mind-boggling. But needless to say, I would love to create my own farmers market. I know exactly how I do it in my mind, where the farmers are treated right. Only the right farmers would be invited, the real ones. And then, and farmers markets now want to, they want the farmer to pay to be there. So not only do they want a booth fee, but they want 10% of your sales. So who's really making that money at the market, And right now there's 58.
Not to mention all the certification, regulation fees, just to even get on a level to participate at one of those markets. It's crazy how I see these, farmers that I farm from, right, that I go and will get my produce or food or meat or whatever it is, eggs from. Most of them don't even have that access. They've been cut off the access to even participate on the organic level at the markets. That's just sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, and everybody's out there. It's a hustle. We've all got our gigs. We all do what we do, and that's part of my mindset to train people. To make your home a unit of production instead of a unit of consumption.
Wow.
So, and I don't care if you're, growing tomatoes or if you're knitting scarves or if you're making,
right.
I don't care what you're making.
Yeah.
Now the kids call it a side hustle,
Yeah.
And for me, that's great, because if you just looked at what your house cost you on a daily basis, you'll shock yourself. Okay, it's costing me, my family, $150 a day to live here.
Yeah.
Why aren't we trying to figure out a way to earn out of here? And especially with the internet today and, and the social medias, we have all that free advertising available to us. But then so many people are handcuffed by HOAs. So a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, our training, is all with HOA thinking in mind. No, you're not going to have 50 chickens in your backyard. No, you're not going to get a rooster, but you need one. Yes, ducks make a lot of noise and they're very messy, but everybody should have 2 or 3 chickens in their backyard. And there's just no way not to. And if you think about how much waste goes to the landfill that you could be giving your chickens,
I'm with you.
Every restaurant should have a chicken coop behind it for all of its kitchen garbage going.
So important.
Instead of throwing it into the, when we did our foods waste program, or we called it food rescue. We were doing tons and tons. We need to wrap up, don't we?
No, I think we got to wrap up. But I'm trying to think of a few last questions, because I really.
Sure.
So there's 2 things I want to ask you. One is I want to talk about real quick on the ferments and the sugar cane. Like, that's super cool out there, the stuff you're doing on some of that. But the other thing is, if somebody visits your farms or knows your farm, and let's say I want to do a live podcast on stage at your farm, or somebody wants to rent the facility or come in and do a wedding or do a house and educational event. How is that possible, and how so, and how can they reach you to do that?
It is possible, but I'm really hesitant. It's just a couple of years now. I'm a rookie in the whole event thing, and it was a caterer that came to me, and it was a screaming success. And I couldn't realize that I could be paid $2,000 to let somebody use my farm.
Yeah.
And so that moved on. We've done a wedding. We've done some other events. We did one event where there was alcohol involved, and they tore the living shit out of the place.
Right.
And I just can't do that.
Yeah.
Our property to us is a sanctuary.
Yeah.
And I even get upset with parents letting their kids run free through the gardens.
Yeah.
And I want to, I work for Tempe School District. I want to plant those seeds in the kids, but they've got to be schooled on manners, and that's missing in today's world.
Yeah.
So I would love to help anybody that wants to use the property, but I'm going to have some harsh restrictions on what I will allow and what I won't allow. What was it, 2 weeks ago, I caught kids in the chicken coop on a Saturday morning, and then they're in our gardens pulling carrots. I can't have that. I can't. And for me, if I could fence the place off, and then it turns into a zoo, where, look at the vegetables, brr, I can't, getting people dirty. It has to be a one-on-one or a very small group type setup. So, at this last event that we had that you guys were invited to, it was way too big. It was 160 people.
It was big.
I mean, the place was just.
But I was in awe listening to what's her name? I forgot her name.
Annie, yeah.
She was
part of the community, and those are the people that, like you and her, and that I love to attract, and the yoga girls doing their yoga stuff there. That's non-impactful, and they respect the sanctuary.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, yes, I'm open to events and podcasts, but I'll vet you really hard.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's part of the game.
Yep. So I know there's people out there listening. I know that all the B2B, the motivational mindset, all the stuff that people in the Phoenix Valley, Scottsdale area, I mean, that is a beautiful place to host a really cool event. And the best part about these events that we're doing is there's no alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's great. Nobody's missing it. It's like if I'm going to go to a B2B and I'm going to really get to know other entrepreneurs in the space, and we're going to talk R&D and processing and building companies, these guys aren't sitting at the bar, right? We're having real conversations without alcohol, and I love that.
Yeah. Remember the focus group?
Yeah, the focus group was amazing. It was. I think that's the kind of
rollout for Rogue Rhino. If you remember,
I remember it was the box club and all that. So the focus group is something I could totally see doing a focus group.
Yeah, we fed whatever it was, 25 people. Yeah. In fact, we had duck that night.
Yeah, we had duck, and I took duck. I took frozen ducks home that night. Yeah, that was great. Okay, well, man, we could talk for a long time. So
thank you for the opportunity.
Now this
little brother.
Yeah, big brother. This is this is great. So, if when you're built for this, you know it, and if you're not, you don't, I guess. And definitely Mark is on the Built for This podcast, and he's gone through it. He understands it. Like, I call him my big brother, and I grab his belt loop because he is teaching me a lot of stuff. And not only that, he's putting his arm around me and telling me to shut the fuck up at times too. Right. So I'm learning, I'm happy, and to have you on this podcast means the world to me. And to have you in my life right out here, it's like I got a partner that understands the craziness up here.
It is crazy.
It is crazy.
It takes grit. And courage.
Yep.
Huge courage.
Yeah. It takes
courage. Even the kids that we have in our Saturday markets to get up at 3:15 in the morning to go to work. That takes courage.
It takes courage.
And to run your own business, it takes courage.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why there's less than 1% of us that do this.
It's true.
And everybody else, they go punch their card.
Hard work.
Yeah.
It's a different mind. It's not about the money. It's about the passion.
Yeah.
That's just the 1% is in passion.
Yeah. Especially on the farmers world. Just think of all those attorneys and everybody out there in those, if they had to grow their own food, how would they ever go to school? How would they ever become a doctor?
They'd rather take money by suing us because we're growing food. That's broken. The system's broken. I'll be talking a lot about it on other podcasts, but today I'm grateful to have Mark out here with us and just showing up on the Built for This podcast. Hit the subscribe button, share this video. This is a small-minded regenerative lifestyle community that needs to get out there. Unless we're talking about meet your farmer mentality, right? Understanding nutrient-dense food. If we're not talking about it, then people aren't listening about it. And we're about educating. So thanks again for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button. And we'll check out with you on the next podcast. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.